If you like the strange and ethereal, you have arrived at the right place. (1996), Liverpool, England, July, middle of the summer. Frank, an off-duty cop, is out shopping with his wife on a Saturday, as he should be. They've been to this street 1,000 times. The street name is Bold Street, which is a story in itself because Bold Street, they've definitely got that right. They're out shopping in a record store, browsing records when they decide to split up and go look into separate stores by themselves. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I'm not splitting up because you got the checkbook and you have the debit card and we need that when I'm out shopping. So Frank and his wife decides to split up. And on that day, everything was normal until it was not. Frank recalls everything going completely silent. Like, not volume down a little bit. Everything mute. Shh, everybody on mute. Everything went silent. There was no sound of cars, no birds, no people chattering, nothing. And Frank stood there and froze in what seemed like darkness. All of a sudden, he hears the honks of cars coming by, but the honks don't sound normal. Eventually, the honk came again, but it was louder and sharp, old-fashioned like. So Frank immediately steps back, and he looks around and notices that this vehicle doesn't look modern. It looks old and rounded with faded paint. It was almost like something from a black and white photograph. He looked up around him and he noticed that the bookstore that he was headed to was no longer there. It was actually replaced with a clothing store by the name of Cripps. He had never seen that before. As many times that he had been on Bow Street, there was never a store there called Cripps. For a moment, Frank wondered, like, am I stroking out? He thought that maybe he had become temporarily disoriented, but I'm thinking to myself, friends, how do you become temporarily disoriented and see completely different cars? Now, he looked up the street to the store he was headed to, and not only was the bookstore changed, but every store on the street was changed. All the cars lined along the curb were different. It looked like the 1950s to Frank. No one seemed to be alarmed. Everyone walked past him in tailored suits, hats, everything, hairstyles from the 50s. Frank was just thinking to himself, maybe I just walked onto the set of a movie. It's like he was trying to rationalize what we know is not rational. As his brain was trying to make sense of all of this, friends, he noticed that there were no cameras, there were no lights, there were no movie directors, so there was no way possible that he could have possibly stumbled into a movie set. Not only did he notice that there were no lights, cameras, action, but he noticed a woman who looked to be carrying a modern bag. And she was just as dazed and confused and scary looking as he was. Frank locked eyes with this woman for a quick second, just a quick, he can't stare too long because Frank is married. You don't lock eyes with a woman for a long time when you're married. But they both decided to head towards this Cripps store, which was the bookstore, but now was some type of old-fashioned clothing store. And they rushed towards the door together. They burst through the door and boom, it's back to the bookstore. Back to reality. Conversations, modern sounds, everything was back to normal. No old clothing store, no top hats, no loud blaring noises from the old cars. Everything was normal. Frank turned to the woman. 4 words. Did you see that? He only needed 4 words because he's married. He don't need no extra filler spaces, no nothing. Just, did you see that? The woman looked back at him and said, I thought they'd open up a new clothing store or something. That's weird. See, now she's doing too much talking because she shouldn't have said that was weird. But again, they both recognized that they saw something that maybe they should not have seen. Frank only experienced this for a minute, but the memory would last for a lifetime. Now, here's the bigger mystery, friends. Frank is not the only one that experienced something strange there on Bow Street in Liverpool, England. There are more stories of people experiencing strange phenomena in the same area. People frequently describe a sudden unnatural silence, people dressed in clothing from a certain period, feeling as though the air has become thick, vintage cars and delivery vans, and a profound sense of confusion or disorientation. I don't know what's happening in that area on Bow Street, but maybe they need to shut it down. A similar account involves a woman going into a baby store, and she thought this was a modern baby store. So she goes in to purchase her baby's clothes, and then the cashier would not accept her debit card. She would only take cash. So she leaves the store to go and get her mother and come back to the store, only to find out that store had closed years earlier and it was no longer there, and there was a bank occupying the place of the baby store. What happened to it? Where did it go? Child, that would have been enough to send me to the psych ward. Now, in another occasion, there was a guy who was in the store shopping, but he wasn't really shopping. He was lifting. He was shoplifting, and when he left the store clerk chased him. They both ended up in an alleyway beside the store, but all of a sudden, everything changed. It was the earlier version of Liverpool that neither of them had ever seen. Everything looked old-timey. And then eventually it snapped back to reality, to normal, and I don't know at that point, did he keep chasing him? Did he say, give me my stuff back? Did the stuff get left in another dimension? I don't know. Something's going on in Liverpool on Bow Street that people need to just stay away from around there, because you might end up back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago. You might look up and dinosaurs might be treading by. Now, there are several interesting theories to what people think is actually happening on Bow Street. Now, the paranormal theory has people thinking that time gently overlaps the other time, allowing people to see a different era, just like quick, like a split second, just like that. Paranormal theory, that's what that one says. While there are some that believe in the parallel universe theory. Witnesses may be experiencing a fleeting intersection of an alternate reality where history unfolded differently. Ain't that interesting, y'all? Now, this stone tape theory one is the one that got me, friends. It says that researchers believe that sometimes certain areas have such significant emotional events that happen that it keeps a record of it. And in rare conditions, it replays it. And sometimes we have like firsthand view to it. So maybe during that time in the 50s, something happened on Bow Street that made it hold this record that just keeps replaying and people just keep experiencing. So what really happened on Bow Street? Did Frank and all the other people who had similar stories just happen to slip into a parallel dimension? Did he step back into the 1950s in some type of time lapse? Or was it all just in their mind? Is this story just not real at all? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is for certain. People are still walking down Bow Street trying to figure out if they're going back in time. Trying to figure out if they're going to slip into another parallel dimension. And all that I ask you, friend, is when you go down there, take your phone and record a video so we can see when you get back what happened when you went into another timeline. If you all enjoyed this type of content, drop down in the comment section and let me know. If anything like this has ever happened to you, please feel free to share that story with me. DM me on Instagram. It's Mo Ground Crackers on every platform. Anyway, friends, I really hope I ain't got you up in too much of a tizzy, and I'm gonna call y'all back later on, okay? Bye.